Welcome to everyone, the students, industry representatives, alumni and staff, and welcome to our fourth spring session. I'm Sanri van Rensen and I will be moderating this session. So Wilmer, you can move to the next slide. So just a little bit about myself, the moderator. You can just move.
There we go.
Very disappointing that I need my own slide to read my own bio. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I am an MC and lecturer for supply chain management, strategic management, and business management at Stadio School of Fashion. In addition to being a lecturer and MC, I'm also currently a PhD student. So if there are any PhD students in the crowd, I know your pain. So I focus on SMEs and digitalization mainly. And then I hold a master's degree in supply chain management. And I believe in long life learning. And that is why I absolutely love being with the School of Fashion at the moment. I feel like I'm growing a lot and learning so much about the fashion industry. And I really look forward to tonight's session and learning from our industry representatives and our academic as well. So my little motto that I always share with my students are do not just plan for today, but always keep your eyes on tomorrow. So the purpose of this session is to discuss local fashion retail and some challenges and opportunities around this. So our main presenter, you already have seen her face, is Wolverine Vessels. And then we will also be in discussion with Brendan Lariche and Mona Hall. So I just want to give some context of what we are going to be discussing tonight. So for the people who, well, everyone who's here registered for this, you would have seen on the landing page, it's important to understand that we are currently busy with a whole range of spring sessions with the eye on the SA 2030 master plan released by DTI on localized fashion. So really seeing how we can localize fashion more. It's an incredibly interesting report if you have not had time to read it. So far, we've handled localized fashion sustainability, local fashion production, and local digital fashion. So if you missed those sessions, there are also recordings available on the website if one of those topics seem interesting to you. So today we are busy with our fourth session and we are exploring local fashion retail. So we will look at how we can compete with global competition, and I think we all know how challenging that is still in today's time. Brick and mortar versus online retail and looking at the local market. Okay, so now that we have a bit of context as to where all of this fit in, I would like to introduce our first academic voice, who is Wolverine Vessels. You can start your presentation. Okay, so I'm just going to give a bit of a bio on Wilmarie, and then I'll give her the floor. So Wilmarie is an MCN lecturer for the BA and BCom buying. She teaches the buying and merchandising, merchandise mathematics and planning, and merchandise planning and buying modules. That's quite a mouthful at Stadio School of Fashion. She holds an honors degree in consumer science from the University of Pretoria. So we've got two Tux alumni over here and completed her postgrad certificate in education in 2020 through Stadio. Wilmarie has over 15 years experience in the fashion retail management sector. So she's practically also industry representative with so much knowledge. So we really look forward to also hearing from her. She started her career at Edcon and has worked for international brands such as Guess and Mattel. Wilmarie's mission is to grow the students' passion for the industry through knowledge. So Wilmarie, the floor is yours. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Good. Thank you for that, Sanri, and thank you for everybody that's joining us tonight. Also really looking forward in chatting with our guest speakers, which we'll have a full introduction to just now in a bit. So I'm just starting off with a bit. Sandra made it sound very fancy with my presentation, but it's more like a full slider type of thing. And it is just to set a little bit the tone of what local fashion in SA looks like, in the sense of more of what is our challenges in the economy, what does South Africa look like, just pulling out a little bit more of stats, just saying so that when we have these discussions, we I mean, it's factors we need to take into account. We are not a first world country, we're not Europe, we're not the USA. And those kind of challenges does also play a role in how we can grow online and local fashion. It's not just the fact that we do not have the fashion or the talent. It is other obstacles as well. Like I'm highlighting here, for instance, is one of the challenges that we do have. Let's start with the negative. Is, for instance, our high unemployment in South Africa, that's sitting at 35 currently. That obviously increases a lot of inflation, increases households not having money, households having less spending, our inflation rates as well. Even if we still have our jobs, we all are paying way more than what we used to. So, the fact that you can actually literally spend less is also going to be a type of halter that might prohibit us growing local South African online, which we want to tackle and discuss today. And like I'm saying there, because like stats that I got from Cantana Brands, where they did an overview on the status of South Africa and brands in specific, was also saying that when they did a survey, it is stated that about 4 out of 10 South Africans do currently earn less than what they did pre-pandemic. So we obviously are all still struggling to fight back from the pandemic, but there's also positives which we will also talk about today, which it also launched us as South Africans, which is usually a country that lags in adapting to new type of technologies, and it definitely did launch us into experiencing where everybody did have to and were forced to go online. So that's also an interesting topic that I'm sure our guest speakers might also shed some light on how's it going with them and their retailers. Good opportunities. I mean, we are South Africans. There's always opportunities. One of the good ones was obviously that we are in the first quarter, our economy did grow again. Well, I know 1.9, but it's good. I know that now recently, obviously, also might have taken a little bit of a tumble with our blackouts and load shedding, but that's a topic for another day. Banks are also back to pre-pandemic profit levels, and there's also a study which the Cantana Brands did that showcased and says that about 46% of the people in our country do believe that they will be financially better off in a year's time. So everybody does have a sentiment, not everybody, half of our population, that there will be a recovery and we're just going through growing pains still. And then another nice positive, which I think is fantastic for South Africa, is definitely that data is getting cheaper. It is, compared to a couple of years back where it used to be way more expensive. And when we're going to talk about online, that's one of the things that we do need. You need to be connected, you need data, and you need the right device as well to do so. Some other stats that I think it's important to have a look at when we have this discussion is also discussing on having a look what population we as South Africans are sitting at. Currently, which falls under the Gen Z generation, it does state that 28% of our population is actually under the age of 15, which is the Gen Zs are the major technology drivers, the game changers in technology, and they really feel their lives are driven by how can I make life easier by doing things with technology rather than going shopping, which I think will also be a big step forward for us as South Africans and retailers continuing and growing online. But we are overall a very young population because further to that, 53% of our citizens are under the age of 30. So we are quite a youthful nation with a long-term growth. And if brands can situate and establish their online presence with these youthful consumers now, it will only benefit them as they grow and as these youthful type of citizens do move forward, as technology is a way of life for them. So that is just a little bit of a background of things that's important to take note when we have a little bit of a discussion on because South Africans and the citizens out there is our consumers who we are discussing with today. Okay. Just another one, which I found because there was lots of data, not lots of interesting data on it, because it's such a new sentiment that we are in at the moment. And that is just showcasing how much, but this is now for rapid grocery delivery. So this is one of the points that I think will be nice to have a discussion on, is because on the slide now, we can see how much this rapid grocery delivery, I see definitely, I have it, it should be RGD, has grown and skyrocketed since the pandemic. I mean, I think we all just heard about 6060 before the pandemic, and now it's a household name, and I think all of us probably had a 66 delivery today. Then it's just showing that obviously how much they've grown. That is 250%. Remember, they've now already launched pre-pandemic, they were already in it, so they have a little bit more of a harder base to base their growth on, but I mean, it is still massive. Then Dash, which is from Woolworths, they already have 1.5 million users on. This is all from Cantona Brands and Bistic that I got these stats from. Then the Pick and Pay as well, the ASAP app, they are showing currently a 300% growth. Obviously, they have a little bit more of a soft last year, which they are working on because they are still growing. And then just the last little yellow dot that we do have there is just also from Bistic stating that last year, there was transaction-wise, there was 500 million transactions conducted online. So that is the transaction volume that was estimated that moved in 2021. So we are already a big online nation. It is still driven by a little bit more of the fast-moving consumer goods type of items and hard goods, and not really perishables. But food, definitely big one. But also, I think the inlays I have up there is noting that obviously the spike is there because research does show that consumers really have a growing desire for seamless purchases. They don't want to go and stand in a store because there is better things to do for them, especially for the younger generation, the Gen Zs, which is also called the YOLOs, which is you only live once. Definitely different on how they decide to spend their time, and which then relates back on how they would want to be shopping. And then I think as well, some topic as well we can work into is, as I have up there, is discussing a little bit and understanding is if we can already have these rapid deliveries for groceries, what is the factors that's halting us to do it for clothing? Is it the DCs? Is it the picking of the clothing? Is it understanding your customer, your size curve, and those kind of things? I think it's also very important to hear from the experts still on the ground, working it every day and understanding their challenges, because as you do, you have way different challenges in moving stock and moving it out of stores than what you will have with fast-moving consumer goods. Okay, then moving on. Just clicking on the right slide. Okay. I think also discussing it definitely today as well is, like Sandra already had a prelude into this, is understanding our local market, really understanding what it is our local market is looking for in growing our South African online presence for local South African brands. Because as we know as well, South Africans do value quality. One of the questions that are posing is specifically calling out the international brands that has way more high fashion, lower quality items that is bumping volume into our South African market, and understanding what drives our customers in making those choices and how we can shift it in order to get South Africans to support a little bit more local. As we say, we all know local is lekker. We have always had a big drive in supporting local, understanding where we're going to. This also ties in with this 2030 master plan, where they've also really captured in deciding how we're going to make manufacturing going back local. And then obviously we'll have quicker turnaround times, and then hopefully one day we can start pushing the volumes that we see coming in from overseas. Okay. Then just 2 or 3 highlights, I think interesting news snippets that is out there, that is also very nice topics to discuss. So if there's any comments on any of these that I've shown this far, please do share it in the chat, which is factors as well really influencing what South Africans are facing at the moment. And one of it is as well from Tweak, where they actually already went and had a little bit of an article on the 3-year review on the clothing master plan. And one of the big things they have called out is there is already a lot of movement in encouraging people and making them more aware of the proudly South African brands and how we can make sure that we promote it and keep on building it and growing our own brand locally a bit more. But then as well, there's also a shift in shopping trends, which is moving away from malls and brick and mortar. That is why we will definitely see a lot of popping up of more experiential stores. But this all comes with a big bill that you need to go and cover if you have to set up a store with whole experiential type of vibe for your customers. So that also, once again, can really be very alluring for a lot of brands to keep on pushing online. And then also just another snippet of just stating as well that in 2025, the stats is showing from F&B that they have collaborated, that there might already be a massive jump we've already jumped from 2020 with 55% in online sales from what we used to have, and then we jumped another 42%. Sorry, and what I wanted to say is, and they're already projecting by 2025, we'll actually have an e-commerce market of 400 billion, which is massive. But we all know this comes with other challenges as well, because you need DCs, you need distributors, you need couriers. This online clothing needs to get to the customer, which is also, I think, a very fun discussion point that we can have. Okay, so that's a bit of an intro for me to get the juices flowing of where we can start talking and what's the obstacles and whatnot as we go into our talk. So if there's any questions along, please start typing them up, and then I'm going to hand over to Sandri now.
Thank you so much, Wolverine. I think it really set the scene in terms of just what we are looking at, and just wanting to highlight that we already discussed production, and I think this is also what Wolverine is highlighting. Today we are looking at retail. We are looking at our market, our consumers, how they are buying, their buying patterns. So it's, yeah, you raised a lot of interesting points. I did definitely not know that 53% of our population is over, well, 30 and below. So that's very interesting, because I also read up quite a bit, and definitely saying that the youth is our consumers. That's where everyone is focusing at the moment, is our Gen Z. So yeah, I have one question for you, and then whilst I'm asking Vilmarie, anyone is welcome to post in the chat, and I will read the question to Vilmarie. Yeah, so we will handle it like that. So if there are any questions so far, you are welcome to post it. So I want to hear your opinion. Why do you believe that we don't have an RDD delivery yet for local fashion retailers? So I'm not speaking here about, because I thought about, okay, Woolies already kind of, delivers their clothing. Why don't we have it for local retailers?
Yeah, I must say, I think it's still the model that we have due to warehousing, couriering, distributing, and getting your stock out there. Because currently all our local retailers, if I'm not mistaken, are just picking from the closest store from where you are staying. Whereas, I mean, that's the same model as a Checkers or so forth, but I mean, we all have to navigate between all those 60 delivery pickers, that when you're also trying to get something from the shelf and you constantly have to hear the ka-ping, ka-ping, ka-ping as they go through. And that's also, I know, becoming a growing concern for Checkers. I've also read recently that they are now going to open up a separate bigger DC where they just pick their deliveries from. so that the stores don't get so full and the customers can still have a pleasant experience in the store. So size-wise, running systems, understanding when I sold an item in store, how much do I literally actually have left in my store as well? That is, we don't, I think, have the systems, the QR systems, as they do have for Zara and those kind of places, immediately giving them info. We still need to run systems in the evening, in the back office. Usually we'll hear from the industry experts, but when I was still working in retail, those reports would only update over a weekend. So it's a week delay for you to still understand what is my stock level and what is my size code level. So I think it's absolutely the type of systems that our DCs run out, our stores run out, and our pay points run out to quickly get information and understanding what is our stock level so that we don't sell something online and then we actually don't have it in store anymore.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And research has also shown that online shopping has made the consumer, I want to almost say, more needy. But if something's out of stock, you're going to go to your competitor. If you order something off Checkers 6060 and the delivery guy comes there and there's no milk, even when you get a refund, you're upset. Yeah. Like, you want the stock to be there. So I definitely agree that I think the systems aren't in place yet. But I think it would be a very cool vision to have like a Uber retail where drivers could register and people buy local fashion and it gets delivered. And it's also a bit of job creation. Just thought of that while she was speaking, but I think it would be such a cool concept. But like you say, I think the inventory and the systems is a challenge there. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Wilmarie. I'm sure we'll have more questions and discussions as we introduce the industry experts. So there's no questions in the chat so far, so I think we can go on to the next slide and I will introduce our first industry representative. So already introduced him way in the beginning, but Brendan, I'll just give you a little introduction and then you can also, then I'll prompt you to introduce yourself as well, but I'll just do a bit of an introduction there. So Brendan is an accomplished international retail professional with over 20 years of experience in specializing in merchandise buying in the sports and outdoor industry. He is knowledgeable through his experience as well as has an education in business admin, in strategic management, operational efficiency, as well as practical leadership. He now heads up the buying and quality team at Cape Union Mart, and I go shopping there quite often. So I'm definitely loving wanting to hear all your opinions. For their apparel, their leisure apparel and accessories, it is also his passion to develop and grow the future generation of merchants, passing on the knowledge he has gained throughout his career. And then I know you also enjoy some trail running and some mountain biking, and I know your bio is a bit cut off there. So without further ado, Brendan, I'm just going to open the floor to you. And I know I already gave your whole history and CV on here. So what I want from you is just a little introduction and then one random fact about yourself that the audience would not know.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, so that basically gives my whole history, but what it doesn't tell you is the detail of that history. So I actually started in stores in 2001 and gained my first experience in retail in stores as store manager for 2 years. And then I moved into stock auditing because I wanted to understand how stock movement happens within a retail industry. So I had a couple of years experience in stock auditing. And then I started with my buying career in 2006. And basically pretty much anything you think about Cape Union Mart, I've bought it before and I've worked in those departments. So I've done equipment, art goods, footwear, apparel, pretty much everything just to kind of understand the business a bit better. Throughout my 20 years that I've been in retail, I've spent about 4 years in the Middle East, where I also then started working with international brands like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, all the big guys, Patagonia, etc. So again, gaining knowledge from the international guys and seeing how they run their businesses and then bringing that experience back to South Africa. And then I started my sort of leadership career in the Middle East as well, and then came back to South Africa to then kind of spread the experience that I've gained. A random fact about me, I actually studied personal training. I'm a qualified personal trainer, and that was the goal when I left school. And well, then retail started eating me up, and 20 years later, I'm not looking back.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Brendan. And do you only do trail running, or is there other sports that you also spend your weekends and free time?
So yeah, I'm a bit old now, but I used to play rugby. So up until Dubai, I still played club rugby there as well. So I love rugby, trail running, hiking. Don't do much of the slower type of sports. I like to be active and out all the time. Trail running takes a lot of time because you spend about 6 to 8 hours a day on the weekends on that. So outside of that, I pretty much do what all South Africans do: is brine, drink, and watch sports.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Well-rounded. Okay, thanks so much, Brendan. We'll hear more of your inputs now. I'm just going to introduce the next speaker, and then we're going to hop in straight to the questions for you guys. So thank you for that. Okay, so our second industry representative is Mona. So she's a senior buyer at Poetry. Attributing to Mona's successful career at Poetry is a holistic experience and understanding of fashion retail from all angles. She has well-crafted technical skills learned via a fashion design diploma at Elizabeth Galloway. She then trained as a designer at Urban Degree, the Platinum Group, and later gained extensive experience on sourcing and supply chain side. So we'll be friends, Mona. Side of retail, working as accessory specialist. That's super interesting. Mona joined Kumi 6 years ago, working across various areas and brands, settling into women's wear last year. With over a decade in business of fashion, Mona's passion for brand design, beautiful product, and the numbers side of business ensures that she results in a driven, well-rounded design lead buyer. Wow, that's quite a bio. Mona, I'm going to hand the floor to you to also just tell us a bit about yourself and also one random fact.
Yeah, so again, that was like quite the summary. So it kind of touches on all of it, but the same as with Brendan, it doesn't really give you the details. So I studied at Elizabeth Galloway. Like Brendan, like I left school thinking I was going to do something completely different. I was going to study quantity surveying and going to that world. I was quite academic at school. And then I did a gap year and I found that actually I really like beautiful things and I really like shopping. So I thought I'd go and study design at Elizabeth Galloway and really absolutely loved it, but also found that my love for academics and understanding things gave me a competitive edge to be able to combine both design and numbers, which then gives you like quite a well-rounded buying mind. So after that, I went to Urban Degree, where I trained as a junior designer under Johan van der Merwe, who's now actually our creative director at Cape Union Mart for the group. And it was quite a harsh learning school. It was like a harsh environment. The Platinum Group, anyone who knows about them knew that like you had to have hair on your teeth to survive it there, but it was an amazing learning school. And I got thrown in the deep end and started sewing very quickly. But it did kill my passion for retail a little bit for a while. So then I went into supply and I worked as a supplier who specialized in fashion accessories. I did that for a couple of years and then found my way back to retail, where Johan kind of recruited me back into his team. So I started as the accessories buyer for leisure across the business. So I bought for Poetry, Old Khaki Men's and Ladies, and Cape Union Mart leisure accessories. And then I did that for a couple of years, went into menswear buying for Old Khaki Menswear for about a year and a half, and then found my way back to ladies' wear apparel in Poetry. So yeah, I've also kind of touched on all the sides of the business, but my learning has mostly been on the job. So like I studied design, and then the rest I really just learned through like doing it, being in businesses where you have to kind of know all the different aspects of the job. And I think that makes for a good buying mind. Yeah. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Something you would know about me is I'm a mom of twins. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mona. Okay, guys, thank you so much for both the industry representatives for being here. I really look forward to your input. So I think, Wilmarie, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we did send the 3 questions to you guys beforehand. So how we're going to do this is we'll discuss the first question. I'll prompt everyone, kind of all 3 of you, to give your inputs, and then I'll also open to the audience to post in the chat, and then I will read the questions to you. Just for the audience, if you have a specific question for someone, just start with their name before you type the question. Okay, so I'm going to start our discussion off with what does the South African value more, brick and mortar or online retail? So Mona, I don't know if you can start off.
I think that is quite a tricky question. It's a great question, but I think that we could even rephrase it to say, like, which market in South Africa prefers which form of shopping, because like Vilmarie said, such a massive part of our South African population hardly has access to water, let alone electricity at best of times, and internet or a device on which they can shop. So that's the majority of our South African consumer, right? Then that leaves us with the minority, and the minority can then be broken up into an online shopper, a brick and mortar in-store shopper, or an omni shopper. And I think in South Africa, where we are currently at is the omni shopper. Like, if we look at all the stats and just consumer behavior, I think that the South African consumer is still a very tactile consumer. I think, especially when it comes to apparel, and this is now not speaking like groceries, like I'm 100% your online grocery shopper. My husband and I both work. We have kids, young kids, like, you know, we all have like between 60 and dash, there's always a delivery each day. So I think like we've established that in South Africa, but in retail and apparel, I think there's not that trust from the consumer yet to know that they themselves understand exactly what they're purchasing, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and how it's really going to fit their body. And then I also think that most of the South African market from an apparel retail perspective, are not necessarily geared up for being an online focused retailer. So like people like Shein, they are set up for online retail. You know, their entire online journey is seamless and takes you to the end product of purchasing. And it's also price driven. So like, I think when you don't have to spend a lot, you don't really feel that worried about making that impulsive buy. But when you get to something where you're spending bigger amounts of money, so like in the poetry world, even the old khaki world, it's a bigger chunk of money you have to take out. And I think then the consumer really wants to know, like, is it going to fit me? You really have to be very handy with a measuring tape if you're going to measure yourself and figure out, like, is it going to fit you? And for retailers to become successful online retailers, I think there's so much work to be done. Firstly, you need to be able to like spec the consumer for them almost and tell them, you know, like if you're so Zara has a little bit of that on their website where you can give basic measurements, heights and stuff, and they will indicate which size you should buy. But that asks for a massive online team and a different aspect to garment technology and like merchandising. Then there's also the distribution side of it. And I think, Vilmarie, to your point, all comes down to systems. So like South Africa, most of the retailers are set up as brick and mortar retailers. So we have central distribution centers. We have limited access to like routes and stuff like that. People like Takealot and Superbalist, they've become quite successful at it because they've acquired Mr. Delivery. It gave them access to delivery hubs and couriers and like a whole different kind of handle on delivery and couriering compared to the rest of us retailers. So I think with that, that's like a whole mouthful. But I think for me, what it means is like we're on track. And I think that the consumer is moving towards online, and with Gen Z and all those guys like being hot on the heels and like very interested about online and being digital and digitized, we have to ensure that we stay ahead. And I think with COVID, it was an amazing like kind of jump start and a push into it, which I think so. And I think Vilmarie also touched on it. It's like we had to really quickly get up there, get engaged. Like during COVID, I remember like just like all the issues, all the like running and like disaster crisis management to try to get online up and running. And I think that's been amazing. And it's like, it has revolutionized our industry, but not to the extent that groceries and those type of goods have.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mona, thank you for that. It's very insightful. I think I'm one of those who still goes to a supermarket, so I actually haven't done Checker 60/60, but I know a lot of people do. I want to know, and people can also start posting questions in the chat. So I do agree. I must say I'm quite. I have ordered from Shein once, literally just to see how it goes, and it's definitely that consumer experience of it's so cheap. If it doesn't fit, it's okay. I'm going to give it to someone. Where I think if you go more to the local fashion, that is a bit more expensive, because I mean we can go into the whole production side and labor costs are more expensive, but local fashion is a bit more expensive. Then it takes a bit more out of the consumer to buy online. Do you, I know the poetry market is also a bit older. Do you believe that that also plays a role, that poetry is still very much brick and mortar?
I think yes and no. I think we do have an older consumer, but we've actually recently like tapped into a much younger market. So like we find that we've got consumers from like late tweens, you know, like we're starting to see sales in size 6s and size 4s and size 8s really skyrocketing, because as we've modernized and changed our ranges up a bit, it's attracted that consumer whose mom is also shopping the store, then she starts to shop, and so it's kind of changed the scape. One of the main things, and this is a Cape Union Mart drive actually, as a group, like store experience is a massive focus for us. Staff with McKinney's and with that knowledge on the product, staff who are trained in the product, who can really help you and guide you and style you or explain to you why you're buying into it. I think a lot of the consumers go to stores for that. So one of the articles also touched on that, where like in-store retail becomes experiential and becomes something where it's like safe haven to go to. It's a beautiful outing. We all have digital fatigue from sitting behind our computers the whole day, and it's actually quite a nice outing. Yeah. But then what we have found is in areas where we don't have a big footprint, we are seeing a lot of online shopping. So I think for us, the benefit in online has been to reach the consumers who previously would only shop poetry if they came down to Cape Town from the Platteland for the day, or like who lives in Bloem but they're in Joburg for business or whatever, and now they shop us, and next time they shop us is only when they're down there again. Now they've got the option to order online. But the one thing that most of our online retailers still lack is ease of return, because if it's an easy return for you, you'll much easier. So that's why Superbulous, for instance, like people will on a monthly basis do a Superbulous online shop, because the return is so easy, it's so seamless. And I think until as retailers, we have kind of perfected that process, I think it's still going to hold the consumer from, because now you're buying online, then flip, it's like quite a mission to get it returned. It's actually better to just go back to store. So I think until we are able to really fine tune the processes, and until it's like an easy experience for the consumer, we're not gonna see that turnaround yet. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I think we can see it with, even if we go a bit local, a bit bigger, like a Mr. Price or a Pick and Pay Clothing, their online stores are not there yet. It can definitely, the consumers need to go into store. Even H&M, who's not like local, but their online shopping is also non-existent. Yeah, basically non-existent. So thank you for that. Just my last question before I go to Brendan. So I don't know how much you can give away about your strategy here. So if you can't, just it's 100%. So would you say you still invest more in making that store experience, or invest also in your online website? Like where's your strategy lying?
No, so for us, the strategy is omni. Because the wider you cast the net, the more fish you're gonna catch, you know. Okay. So we're investing equally, like we're investing in opening new stores across all our chains. Like in poetry, we're very excited. We're looking at like very cool new locations and unexpected towns. But we're also putting a lot of resources and projects behind e-commerce. E-commerce is a team that since 2020 to now has grown into like exponential amounts of people. They like actually have just moved into a different part in the building because they were like piling out of the IT department.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, it's really for us, the focus is to attract the consumer on all fronts.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Mona. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Brendan for your input on the question.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so very similar to what Mona said, since we work for the same group, so we kind of have the same strategies. But a couple of stats just on how the industry's grown. So if we had this question 3 years ago, I would have emphatically said, no, we are bricks and mortar, 100%, like there's no question. In 2019, the sort of digital population, or people who have access to internet, was at a 59% of our total population. At the moment, well, since 2001, which I think is now 2002 is going to be even higher, we're sitting at a 74% of our population. So that's roughly a 15 to 20% growth over the past 2 or 3 years. If we've got about a 60 million, 65 million population, that's an extra 15 million people that have access to internet. That's potential customers that we can sell to. So I think it's grown exponentially. We're still in the growth phase of the S curve, if you want to think about it that way. So there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen. And from personal experience, like Mona said, when 2019 hit and all our orders needed to be online, we, as all staff of KP Mart, was physically in the DC, in our online DC, to go and pick and pack for customers to get deliveries out, because we just weren't set up for it. Since then, we've invested, I'm not going to give you figures, but bucket loads into exactly what you spoke about. So we are actually happy to report that we are one of the retailers who have our systems in place and who do our deliveries direct from an online DC. So we've separated our bricks and mortar DC and our online DC. It has its own stock holding and it's real-time feedback that we get. So what you see online as available is what's actually available that can be picked and packed. And I think it refreshes every hour. So it's almost real time. And then it goes directly to customers. We've also invested in that because of omni-channel, where a customer can go into any store, bricks and mortar. If we don't have their size or the product that they want, they can find it from any of our other stores, order it via our omni-channel, and get it delivered to their house. So they don't have to do another trip. They don't have to go on their phone to order it online or anything like that. We catch them in the store and we make the sale in the store, and then we have it delivered at their house. So I think what Mona said is correct. It's more of an omni-channel market for us, and omni-channel in its true form is you want to capture the customer experience on all platforms: bricks and mortar, mobile, tablets, laptops. When they walk in a mall and there's an advertisement, when they see an ad on TV, that experience needs to be seamless across all of those channels. And I think that's where we're focusing on. That's where we find we build trust with the South African customer, because I think that's the thing that everyone's touched on so far, is that our consumer, because it's so young still, the trust factor, especially in clothing, is still very low. Is it the right quality? Is it the right fit? If I buy something from a shirt from Woolies and I buy a jacket from KP Mart, is it going to be the same fit or is it different? What does the fabric feel like? I mean, that's another thing that we saw in the retail trends coming up. It's very tactile. Like a lot of it is very minimalist design that's coming out from a trend perspective, and it's all about the fabrics and the touch and the feel and how comfortable it feels against the skin. That's something you can't capture online. Another thing you can't capture online is showing a customer how to dress. So they still like to come into a store and you've got an outfit, nice merchandise for them. You've got the handbag that goes with it. You've got the hat that goes with the dress. You've got the shoes that goes with the socks. So you kind of sell a closet solution, where us in South Africa haven't found a solution yet how to translate that onto online. So what we found is that our online basket size is a lot smaller. So the basket value is still kind of relatable to our bricks and mortar, but the units that they buy per transaction is a lot less. So where it's ones and twos, where bricks and mortar, you can convert a customer into buying 5 or 6 items. So yeah, the challenge there then is how do you get that customer to return for those other 4 items online? So it's all of those sort of challenges that we're still facing. So yeah, I would say we definitely are on the cusp of becoming an online market, but as we catch up to the rest of the world of being an online market, it's already very quickly shifting into a mobile market, which is a completely different thing to being online, because now everybody's getting ready to be online thinking people are going to browse via their computers. But if your website isn't phone ready, like tablet ready or phone ready, like that's the worst thing for me, is going on my phone and I can't shop properly because it doesn't look the same as it looks on a website or in the store. So I think we almost need to, as a South African industry, need to leapfrog the online sort of industry and go straight to mobile, in my opinion, because that's where those 15-year-olds are shopping. That's where the 20-year-olds are shopping. They don't even want to go through the effort of opening a computer to go and search. They want to be pinged while they're walking in a mall. Oh, there's a Cape Mart store. By the way, they've got this special, or shop into this look and you can get a free gift. Or they want that push notifications and instant gratification. I think we need to catch up to that even faster than catching up to being an online retailer.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm definitely a mobile shopper myself, and I'm not even Gen Z, still under 30, but not a Gen Z. So 100% agree. I know even some of the massive website builders already have a mobile view as well, because it's so important having your mobile site also correct. So thank you so much for that. I have one question for you, and my question is, Jenna just commented that it's excellent news that you guys are really geared for omni-channel now, and I 100% agree. I think lockdown, definitely, we can't chat around it because it's a massive thing that happened, is it did drive online shopping. Where are your competitors, local and globally, in terms of their omni-channel fulfillment?
So without sounding too cocky, locally, I don't think our competitors are anywhere near what we can offer. I think we the first with the I mean, I won't say which system we partnered up with, but it's a global software system. We're the first globally that is using the suite that we are going to be using and still building on for our e-commerce. So we are one of their preferred partners globally in rolling out this sort of omni-channel look and feel, which is why it's costing so much money, but we can see the results immediately. Don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And on that, I want to also, if there's anyone watching here with, let's say, a small SME, like a smaller business who can't afford the software, what would you recommend for them to get onto the online retail ship?
I think there's 2 things, is how you present your product online. So make it as shoppable as possible. So amount of clicks is very important. How many times do you have to click to get to the product you want? And also the images that you use, how attractive are those images, and how much does the product show, the shape, the silhouette, the drape of the fabric, that kind of thing. So it's how you show up with your product. And the thing that most people overlook, which is the most boring part, is the logistics. It's the convenience factor. You have to answer the convenience factor. Someone doesn't want to shop and then wait for 2 weeks to get their delivery. They want to get it, if not today, tomorrow. So partnering up with a logistics partner that can provide that service that solves that customer problem. So you're solving the problem of making it visually acceptable for them to shop, or easy for them to shop, and you're getting a partner on board that can deliver it in the state and the quality and at the time that they need it. I think those are the 2 big things. All the other stuff is nice add-ons, and when you want Google Analytics and you want to see who your shop is and demographics, that's much later in the journey.
Yeah, very interesting. So do you guys use a third-party logistics provider for door-to-door delivery?
Yes, yeah, we do. It's a third party that we've partnered up with. They're obviously very well known in the market, but I think we are probably one, or if not their biggest, but one of their biggest customers from a retail perspective. But it's also the partners we looked for, or the partner that we now found, is not just the partner that does it for us, like I said, in the time that we need it and that kind of stuff. It's also within our values of our business. So we want sustainable packaging. We don't want to use plastic. So we actually even recently stopped using plastic for online. So it's going to be delivered in cardboard or in paper bags or that kind of thing. So looking for a partner that supports your values and shares your values. That's the route that we've gone.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It's super interesting because yeah, I work with quite a few people starting up SMEs, and obviously my studies are in SMEs. So I'm guessing that for them also using third-party logistics providers obviously is the route to go. Vilmarie, I don't know if you want to add to this question before we move on.
No, I must say, yeah, it's very interesting to hear because I think being physically working in the retail environment in COVID and post-COVID, I think aged all of them by 10 years. But also the experience also grew with 10 years in that shorter time of how you had to really go and change your thinking and your way of doing. And I'm sure as well as more actually towards the question is because I know with a lot of stock, if it gets imported, shipping time is takes long. It's 40 days on the water. It's getting the stock here, but then online also usually needs to have time to photograph these items by the time it also goes into store. So it adds a whole extra loop of a department which you never actually had to deal with. So it also is a whole extra, I think, skill set and workload that you guys still being, on the ground, being, buying in the retailers. Which I think it's very interesting to hear how it is shifting and how fast it is shifted. I think that's a nice thing of having a man in our chat today is because we got the numbers. It's like 15 million. There we go. And yeah, if you quantify it, it is, it's a lot. It's amazing, and it's amazing to also know. And I think it's wonderful for the whole of South Africa because on your phone, I know it's not just shopping, but it's information as well. It's other sorts of information. It's your education and things you can also build onto that. So I think it's also good news overall for South Africans and this amazing systems that you guys, Brendan, has now brought in. It's very exciting. That's all from me, Sanri.
Okay, thanks, Vilmarie. Mona, I see you unmuted there. I don't know if you want to just add before we move on.
No, I think that it is very true that Vilmarie was saying in terms of like going online has really added a whole nother level of complexity to our process. And I think I was on a course recently, and the one topic was like business environment, whatever. And in the end, what they said, the only thing that you know for sure is that there's change and that change is constant. And I think that ability to be agile and be quick on your feet as a retailer and as a business owner, I think is so crucial. Like the environment that we're currently trading in is just insane. From one quarter to the next, our shipping lead times are changing. Like it used to be 40 days, then we went to 75 days on the water, then came back to 60. Like it's just you're constantly kind of changing the end goal, or not the end goal, the route to get to the end goal. And I think if you're not as a business agile, you'll get left behind. So I think, that is just like some of my thoughts around how COVID and just like the drive towards online has really changed all of our processes and also like how we get there.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think we need to kind of like my motto right in the beginning. We need to adapt to change all the time. We can't just stay where we are. We have a question from Jenna. It's not to a specific person, so maybe one can just volunteer to answer. So I'll read it out. Jenna says, I think what I found about SMEs is that they lean into the personalized experience with personal notes or direct messaging when online shopping. The consumer seems to enjoy this personal touch. Is it possible to incorporate that into a larger retail consumer online shopping journey?
So I think I can answer that. From a bigger group, so the advantage that you have as an SME is a lot of your order placements is not just digital. There's usually an email that follows, or there's sort of an engagement with the customer. So you've got their opt-in for their personal information. With the POPI Act, etc., for us to be able to give a personalized message, we need to know who the person's name is and that kind of stuff. and customers have to opt in for that information to be shared. So we are busy building that. We do have a friends and family sort of platform, which is our loyalty program. We'll be launching it now, I think in the next 2 weeks or so, where we are going on that consumer journey, where we are getting customer data to enable us to do that personalized messaging. So it's definitely possible to do. You also just you want to still create that authenticity and not just make the customer feel like it's just another number or it's an automated message. I think with the scale of a big retailer like us, it will be very difficult to balance that, because it's a very fine balance of having a personal message versus a auto-generated bot message with a person's name on it. So that experience you can try and create, but I think that's where SME has got the sort of leading edge on big retailers, and that's almost their USP, is that they can provide that bespoke experience that is personalized. I don't think big retailers can get away from the sort of auto bot unless you have a lot of people pressing a lot of buttons and typing out special notes for people. When you're processing orders of about 2,000 to 3,000 orders a day, you can just imagine how much capturing that needs to happen. So yeah, I think that personally, I think it should stay with SMEs, because otherwise, I mean, they're not going to have a leading edge or competitive advantage, and then they're not going to get the opportunity to build themselves into an established business.
Yeah, very interesting. I think, I think I agree. I agree quite with that. I think it's quite a challenge. And Jenna also just commented and said, great, it is really interesting to reflect upon. For me as a consumer personally, there's nothing as frustrating as chatting with a robot. So there's a thin line between being personalized and just having this chat bot. My insurance company, I won't say the name, has like a WhatsApp chatbot, and I just tried to get one document, and on WhatsApp it took me an hour, still didn't get it, and they don't have a number to call or an email to send. So it is that fine line between, okay, we have chatbots and we're digitalized, but is it actually really personal? And I think that's I agree with you in terms of it needs to stay with SMEs until the challenge can be resolved. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to the second question. Brendan, I'll start there with you. In the international market, how can South African retailers capture the local market while still being competitive? And in our introduction for this session, we kind of, there's a lot of articles coming out like Shein's taking over H&M and Zara combined. So like online retailers taking over brick and mortar. I know H&M and Zara are also actually international, but how can we compete with these massive international retailers?
So again, a lot of it will be my sort of personal opinion on this, because it's quite a topical discussion we can have around it. I personally think that we as South Africans undervalue the value of proudly South African, things made locally, consumer engagement, creating jobs and telling that story. I think that's our USP to the market, and South Africans and people globally buy into that messaging. A lot of the stuff we see in articles about the H&M and the Shein is a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a marketing tool for them to disrupt the market. There's not necessarily a lot of truth in what they choose to release into the public, but rather the narrative they would like to drive. Like we said, because we're an omni-channel, that our customer wants that engagement. They want to touch, feel, they want to speak to a person. You can't do that with Shein. You can't do that with the Zaras of the world. So that is super fast fashion. It's in and out. You're going to throw it away in a dumpster. You don't care about sustainability. You don't care where it's made. And I think our South African consumer and global consumers are becoming a lot more aware of the impact of fashion on industry, on the globe, on nature, etc. So I think staying competitive for South African brands is telling our story, being proud of our story, and staying on trend and conversing with our customer. Keep that personal touch to some extent, which the other guys can't. They in fast fashion, and I think the market is moving away from fast fashion to slow fashion. So improving on our product quality, improving on our product service, our customer service, solving the customer's problems and being customer focused. I think that's the way we'll stay competitive. I think from a design perspective, a trend perspective, that kind of thing, we're very much up there. From a retail infrastructure, we've got some of the best retail infrastructures globally, purely just because of the brands that I've worked with, and the offices I've gone to, and the sales meetings I've had with Patagonia and Amsterdam, and all those things. Like, we are actually much further ahead globally than we give ourselves credit for, which is why so many South Africans get so much jobs overseas. It's because people value us as South Africans and the way we do business, the way we conduct ourselves. So I think South Africa is just, we've got this sort of nederige, sorry for the Afrikaans, but the minderwaardigheidscomplex that we're not as good as the rest of the world. I think we need to shout louder of actually how good we are.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, like we said, it's usually like said we're in Africa, but we should break those barriers, and I think that's definitely something we need to put in education. I read an article today about sustainability and how important it is to start at universities and start with the students, and raise that education, because that's where it's going to start. I just have one question in terms of, we're saying the South African market, slow fashion is definitely happening, and fast fashion, we're all hoping, I guess, is going to take a bit of a dip at some stage, but it's still massive. And I think, and this ties in with Vilmarie's presentation, we have a massive unemployment, and we also have massive inflation, petrol prices rising, the middle class are struggling. So how so basically we are cash strapped. So how do you deal with those type of trends, and still keep your consumer? Because then the price becomes more important than sustainability.
100%. So the price does become more important to the customer, but it's the story that you tell of why they should make that purchase. And I think that's what we as a company has focused on a lot, is not what you're purchasing, but why you're purchasing it. Telling the story of what it enables you to do, what experience can you get out of using this product, what type of, it's like, especially with Kway, it's an investment piece. It's not something that you're going to change next year or the year after. You're investing in something for the next 10 years. So it's okay to spend the cash now, because you won't have to spend it 6 months down the line. You won't have to. It's, the quality is so great, for, especially in youth. Our narrative is changing into hand-me-down quality. So you can buy it for your oldest. It can go to the next brother or sibling, and then it can go to the cousin, and it can go to the next person. So, I mean, our GM has bought stuff from us before he even started with Cape Mart, probably about 6 years ago, and it's gone through 4 children. One item has gone through 4 children. So it's telling that story, and not necessarily how much you're spending, but what you're spending it on. So creating that value proposition. And then, like I said, the other thing is the rewards program. So giving cash back to a customer. So yes, we know that you are cash strapped and you are spending money with us at the moment on an investment piece that you in future won't have to spend on again. But you know what, at the same time, for your purchase, we're going to give you X% back, which you then have in form of a credit, which you can build up and then eventually get something for free. So I think those are the 2 messages that we need to drive. So it's not necessarily the price, but why you need to pay that price, and how long are you going to be able to use this product and not have to replace it.
Yeah, I think telling that story, and just, I think it's adding customer value and quality.
Yes.
Is very important. Thank you for that. Super interesting. Vilmarie, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go to Mona. Vilmarie, if you can unmute. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, had a balance button challenge there. Yeah, I must say I agree with everything Brendan is also saying. It is us South Africans, we are differently wired. We are wired in and it's not even just clothes that you can hand me down to somebody you know. We all know we also I mean, there's a massive drive as well on good quality clothing that people start now donating and doesn't end up on rubbish bins. But I think we as South Africans we've always been passing on our clothes as well to whoever is needy. That is also the type of persons we as well are. And that is, I think, what makes us different as South Africans, and that is why the Scandana brands report also stated that it's something as well that the youth values in South Africa is quality. But I think it comes through as well. It is a majority of our South African. And I think as well, if you go through into different type of clothing items as well, and that is where South Africa can definitely capture the market, is especially with this master plan, if we can really, push it forward and make local production big again in South Africa, is that we can then produce quality, because we've got so many of our citizens that also don't have cars. They have to walk a certain amount to get to their transport. Now, you can't wear shoes that's only going to last you a week and then it breaks from when you're walking and those kind of things. We are just a different nation where we need as well as quality type of items, which makes us, I think, a good way for us to capture our market and sustain it, and then obviously keep on growing online with that.
Yeah, 100% agree. Thank you for that, Wilmarie. Mona, I'm going to jump straight to you with your opinion on the question.
I think, yeah, I can absolutely mirror what the guys have said so far, but I think the other thing that makes us unique compared to our international competitors in the local market is that the South African consumer is quite unique. They're a bit different. They're different to the European and the American consumers. They're different to the Australian consumer. Our body types are different. Our needs for our garments are different. And I think as local brands, we have all the insights into that. And I think we are able to personalize and South Africanize trends and products much more so than what a Zara or an H&M or Shein will do. Like, they just don't cater for our consumer and our body types and for the diversity within South Africa. And I think that, like, if we can create brands that stand for quality, that stands for, really catering to our consumer and creates a lifestyle that they then buy into, I think that we are miles ahead of the international guys that are like trying to eat away at our market. And you can see when brands are trying to compete with that. So one of our big local brands is getting not one of ours, so like one of the local brands is being given a hard time because in order to compete on price, they've dropped on quality. They stand for quality. And this is now the thing so it comes back to what Brendan has said, like we know what we stand for and we stick to that as brands and as retailers, then you know what, I think our consumers will stick with us and they will support us and they'll support our journey. Like, for instance, at Cape Union Mart, as part of our 2030 plan and our commitment to South African retail, South African development within the production sphere, we have created a design center called Green Threads. That's part of our head office. There we're employing 40 people. In our cable factory, I think we employ about 300 people. In our leisure wear design, our leisure wear factory, we employ, I think, 270 people there. For every person we employ, especially on that level of like factory workers, we're feeding 8 people. And suddenly everything becomes exponential. And when you tell that story to the local consumer, they buy into it because you know what, we all care about our own. And Zara and H&M can't say that. So I think as retailers, that is also a way for us to remain relevant in the local market.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think buying into that story is so important. Just a question that popped up, especially because you're in women's wear, especially. I wasn't a student, I guess, too long ago, and I'm still a student. But so when we say, most of our generation are below 30, and poetry is also tapping into that market. How do you face the fast fashion giants and tapping into that student market because they are cash strapped? Is there strategies that you follow or?
Yeah, so like I think price tiering is important. So having KPIs and ensuring that you have aspirational product within your ranges. So a good example is even in K-Way, they've launched a range called K-Light, which is like a very entry-level product into being able to buy into the K-Way puffer lifestyle aesthetic. And the same poetry, we'll have entry-level dresses. We're Destination. We're known for our beautiful dresses, and we'll offer something for the guys that has less cash to spend, and then also have those like beautiful exorbitant pieces where you like get everything in the kitchen sink. So I think for us, it's been very specific about building our ranges according to that. And I think when there's value, when the value equation is there for the consumer and they feel like they are getting amazing value for what they're paying, they don't mind paying. And we've seen that time and time again. When we strip away from the product to come into a low price point, be it even by 100 Rand, it is most of the time you would have sold better and made more by going 100 Rand up and rather adding that invisible zip rather than the like chunky one, you know. And I think that consumers, when they see that, when they see the value and they see the beauty in the product, they spend on it. And in poetry in particular, you know, they come in, they wanting to buy into a lifestyle. And I think that that gives us a bit of a trump on the like H&Ms. They're not buying into H&M lifestyle. They're buying a piece that they're going to toss at the end of the season because after 3 washes it would have pulled, or like it would have like the spirality would have like twisted your entire t-shirt, you know. So for us in poetry, we also we spend a lot of time and energy on beautiful fabrics, beautiful prints, developing our own in-house, whereas some of the other retailers, all they do is they buy the copy. So I think being design-led is also something that is bringing the consumer to us, because we are giving them something that they'll get next season from one of the other retailers who would have then knocked it off. But, you know, I think we try to give them something that's truly unique to poetry.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I did not know that if you make something 100 Rand cheaper, then that's like the outcome. That's super, super interesting. So thank you for that, Mona. Okay, guys, I'm going to open to the audience. If there's anyone that wants to post in the chat just regarding question 2, I will take any questions now. Just whilst we are waiting, is there any industry representative or Wilmarie that wants to just add onto this question before we move along? Good. Okay. Awesome. Then I'm going to move on to question 3, and I think this is quite a nice one. So how can local fashion be seen as cool and aspirational in the eye of the consumer? So how can we be as cool as they have something for everyone? You know, so how can we kind of stand out and be cool and aspirational to the consumer? Brendan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Cool, yeah. So a lot of it we've kind of already said is the value proposition, selling the why, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's the other thing is top of mindness. So being in the face of the consumer and sending and constantly having that sort of golden thread messaging. An example of how we change the way we show up as well. We've seen now through a film competition that we had for an outdoor industry, the way people are shooting photography and filmography, whatever you call it, videography, is very much sort of Insta ready. It's almost like selfie mode videography is seen as professional videography, or a selfie picture angle is now seen as a professional picture angle. So it's almost like understanding what the digital content is that people are consuming and showing up in that way. So it's where we used to have like a still frame image of a product and we go, cool, here's a product and it's going to cost you 999. Now all of a sudden you've got a guy and it looks like he's holding a selfie stick and he's wearing it in a cool way. That's showing up completely differently so that people can buy into that lifestyle. So I think some of us in South Africa are starting to do that, and then some of us are still very traditional. And then tapping into the traditional is not to be afraid to take risks. Because we've historically been a very traditional market, I think in most retailers are still very conservative in their approach to change, whether it be a change in how they show up, a change in the brands they want to launch or the product type they want to buy in, or how they show up online and in their marketing. I mean, there was one thing about Woolies took a lot of flack with their one in-store image of gender inclusivity, where there were 2 women sort of like a couple, but they were on a wall as you walk into. Like, they got so much flack from the public for having that as part of their VM because the market is still so conservative. So as retailers, we then kind of take a step back and go, oh, now we have to really look at our strategy, instead of going, you know what, actually that was, we are here to disrupt, we are here to push it forward, and we're here to move our market forward with us. And almost not listen to the naysayers, but just being true to what you want to stand for based on what we see from an international trend, because it is coming to South Africa. It's just, are you brave enough to do it now, or do you want to wait until South Africa catches on and then you sort of a Me Too movement? I think we need to not be part of the Me Too movement and kind of drive our own sort of narrative and our own direction that we want to go that is in line with global. So I think those are the two major things. And then the other thing I would say is invest. Like we've mentioned it briefly, but invest in systems, invest in technology. I mean, a lot of the things that we are struggling with, which I think you might have touched on in manufacturing as an example in the previous sessions, is having the technology to make or to weave fabric in South Africa, having the technology to do special washes in South Africa, having the technology to do seam sealing, laser cutting, like all of those functions that you can buy from a Chinese supplier or from a supplier out of India, that's preventing us from making the product locally. So now we can't tell the local story because we've imported the product or we've imported the fabrics, not 100% South African. So you can't tell that cool factor of proudly South African because we don't have the investment into the machinery or the technology to do it. The online space, so having the investment in building a DC for online, the investment in building an infrastructure for online, changing the way we shoot things, but buying multi-million rand machines so you can do videos of product in 360. Like we have to, as South Africans, buy for the future. And I think it's based on your slogan as well, is constantly look at the future and invest now for the future. And don't wait for the future to catch up and then you want to spend the money.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And we touched on that in question 2 as well, and it comes out here is know your business strategy and know what you stand for, and that's how you are going to be cool and aspirational. Is you need to stay true to your image and to yourself. It confuses a consumer a lot when a company just releases something and you're like, but that's not Woolworths, and that's not what we think of them. So being like that strong in your strategy is absolutely important. And then we had a digitalization session last week, so I won't go too much into it, but I think it is such an important topic to also touch on when you want to be cool and aspirational, just in terms of investing in artificial intelligence, looking at social media, and like you say, having kind of those TikTok type videos with influencers, because that's what Gen Z looks at. They are on TikTok most of the time. They want to see an influencer wearing clothing. So it's very important, I think, new trends that we have to start looking at and seeing, but how can we play a role and be cool and is aspirational? So thank you so much for that. Mona, I'm going to head over to you.
Yeah, I think that I can touch on some of the same topics. I think first and foremost, I'll stick to the marketing topic that you guys were almost talking about now in terms of digitization. And I think that marketing is so crucial to the success of a brand. How you're putting yourself out there and staying relevant within that. Because we're even seeing that influencers no longer have the same influence they used to have. You know, even that is falling away, and it is just ever changing. As soon as you think you've got the groove, you know, the next thing comes up. And I think it comes back to the agility and change, and knowing that good is the enemy of great. As soon as you think you've nailed it, you are dead in the water. You know, like as soon as it starts going too smoothly, too easily, you know, like you're going to be days old bread tomorrow. So I think it's like really challenging yourself and trying to consistently improve, and having this mindset of like, you know what, it's a journey, it's not a destination. Like, you know, retail and being a brand and putting yourself out there is never perfect. You're constantly working on it. I think that, so that's one of the things that I think has to be so important. And then that speaks to range as well, and what you're actually producing and putting out there for the consumer, because again, you can't do the same strategy, the same process all the time. Why will the consumer buy your new set of spring dresses if it's pretty much a carbon copy or an update, a move on from last year? It's like every season we're like, you know what, we've learned from last season or from our previous, say, spring. We've done our post-seasonal, we've learned all our lessons, but let's take that away. Let's do something new, you know, and but you need to be so true to your brand that even when you're going completely off like a new base, that you're still doing it within what's right for your brand. And then I think the other thing that's really going to stand out for local brands, and something that we're already seeing consumers are becoming really obsessed with and like really caring about, is sustainability and the environment, social impact. A few of those topics that we've also touched on. I think that COVID has really taught us that people suffer, the environment suffers, and you know what, as consumers, we do try to do good. That's why so especially in our industry where it's like a slightly more affluent consumer, they want to feel good about what they're buying. So like you also need to tell that story, you know, like this is a beautiful 100% linen. It's breathable. You are going to feel like you're wearing nothing, and you're going to survive the February heat waves in this, you know. But it was ethically sourced. It uses less water than cotton, and it's really about marketing then, like these beautiful initiatives that you have. And I think putting a modern spin on that, and then using your ethos as a brand to stay relevant along with trend, because there's trend and then there's design and being relevant. And I think a lot of the fast fashion guys, they just chase trend. And a lot of the younger consumers, the 15-year-olds and youngers, well, that's all they want, you know. So you must also decide, who are you catering for? And if that is who you're catering for, oh my goodness, go wild, and then it's all about price. But if you are like catering for someone who is also, trends are moving towards trans-seasonal dressing. You want pieces that are going to last, that are investment pieces that you're going to wear year after year. Like, you know, we all have that beautiful white shirt that you've had in your cupboard for like the last 6 years and it's still pristine. And if that is your angle, then you must really commit to it, you know, and never compromise on it. And I think that's how we'll, you know, ride the wave of the international consumers and win our local consumers back. International competition, and keep our local consumer. Long day, guys. I'm running out of English here. My vocabulary is running out.
Sorry, at least we're on our last question. See, even me, I'm running out. No, 100% I agree. I think being agile and being flexible to the market is so important as well, but staying true to your brand and keeping it fresh, but keeping your strategy and your brand. I had a question for you, and I'm going to think of it now. So in terms of we now looking kind of at the South African market and how we can capture them, but how could we capture other people, a more international market?
International market. I think that for our business, for instance, I know the biggest like holdbacks has been process and systems and like practical things, rather than thinking that our brands aren't going to be left. Because you know what, when you shop internationally, our brands hold up against them 100%. Like Kway next to Patagonia, they have all the same specs. They're as beautifully made. They're as well considered, as functional. Poetry next to an Anthropology, like, or next to a beautiful cost store, like, you know, I think that as South Africans, we are sometimes scared to put ourselves out there. So like you were saying, Brendan, minderwaardigheidscomplex, and we think we're not good enough, but actually, you know what? We can really hold our own. And I think once we get out of the like kind of bump that COVID has caused all retailers, it's really just investing in the technologies and the systems and processes that makes it able for you to retail internationally. And then there's obviously like legal stuff that's also complicated. It's more like international is complicated. I don't think that it's that we can't shop it. It's like, I think when people like when travel was a thing, our biggest consumer base is normally international travelers. You know, they love shopping our brands. So I think we can do as well as any other brand overseas.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, thanks, Mana. Brendan, you want to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you said there. So we found out very quickly during COVID that our tourism industry contributed close to 30% of our sales. So 30% of our consumer base roughly are attributed to foreign sales, essentially. And we've got the luxury as buyers and a buying team to travel quite often during the year. And now that travel's opened up again, like I challenge anybody who goes to an international airport and doesn't see a K-way jacket or a backpack or like it's everywhere. So I think we're already doing the job. We're just not telling people about it. And that's where we sort of it's a what do you call it, a self-fulfilling prophecy, or the opposite of it, that we're telling ourselves we're not good enough, but actually we are out there. We're just not bragging about it. The Americans are really good at bragging about everything they do well, but they'll never tell you what they're not doing well. Whereas South Africans, we're like, oh shit, we should be better at this, we should be better at this, but we never actually brag about the stuff we do well.
Oh, no, it's 100% true. And it's also super, super interesting about your tourist rates. Super interesting. But I think that is so true. I think we are actually competing well. It's just not always well known.
Yes.
Just looking not at a Cape Union or a Poetry. So if we look at local fashion, and I almost want to go to smaller local fashion, Mona, I know you said now legal is an issue and the processes and having the systems in place. Is there anything you want to add just in terms of local, smaller retailers? How could they go international? How could they go and compete?
I think it's logistically hard. You know, like I think you need to have a contact that side, and you need to partner probably with the retailer on the other side who then you export your product to. So you need to register as an exporter their side. You need to make sure that you're not infringing on anyone else's name who might be using something similar to you. So like I know, was K-way, Brendan, correct me here, they a few years ago looked at going international and someone else had the name K-way registered, you know. So it's like silly things like that that can be stumbling blocks. And you need an infrastructure, you know. It's like a big investment to go abroad. So I think the smaller brands, it's doable if you connect with, like I saw a local jewelry brand, like a smaller jewelry brand was starting to be stocked in a French like retail space. So that suddenly then opens up to European market because they can then buy the brand off of that platform, you know. So I think that's the top of mind for me, the easiest way almost for small business to get their brand up there, internationally.
Yeah, no, that makes 100% sense. Thank you for that as well. I'm going to move on to Jenna's question, going back to cool and aspirational and our whole discussion. And then Wilmarie, I'll also hand over to you after Jenna's question. So from your experience, what critical skills do young professionals need to learn in order to succeed in the fashion retail environment?
They need to be jacks of all trade, man. There's not one skill that you need all the skills. And in particular, critical path management and project management. Like, I think fashion retail is more admin than it is like creativity. So yeah, Brendan.
Yeah, and I think it's like the misnomer that we found for a lot of students when they get into the workforce is they thought as a designer or they thought as a buyer, they go on business trips and they buy pretty product and then that's it. That's kind of the job. There's a lot of administrative, analytical, strategic thinking that needs to go into what we do. So I think that's the first thing, is to be able to look at things analytically, understanding numbers, understanding the sales and the data that you're receiving and analyzing it in a way that it makes sense to drive future strategies. I think that's a very important thing. I mean, obviously you need to have a taste level if you're going into fashion, because you need to have a product that looks good, but you need to understand the depth of stock, the amount of investment, your sell-through rate. So how much are you going to make? How much do you need to make in order for your sell-through rate to give you a profit? Like that sort of business side of things is what you need to understand. And I think Mona will agree with me. You need to have hair on your teeth, and you need to have a steel back, and you like it's rough, a very thick skin. People are opinionated. You never do the right thing really according to everybody. Someone will always criticize what you do, and you need to be able to. When people laugh at me, I preach about 3 circles: your circle of control, your circle of influence, and then the circle of concern. And you have to kind of compartmentalize those things into, is it something you can control, influence, or is it something you should just be aware about, but you can't change it? And then that changes the way you reflect internally, because a lot of people crash and burn because they take all the opinions as a sort of a personal attack. when it isn't. It's everybody in retail's there to get the best for the business. And as long as you focus on that, as opposed to your own personal taste or your own personal opinion, you'll go a long way.
100% agree with that, because I think in retail is so fast moving that you need to be able to keep up with it. You need to be very driven. You need to be very structured. You need to be committed to the outcome, and be quick to action, but actioning with the right reasoning in mind. So it's like almost, comes back to agility, quick decision making, and quick thinking.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Sorry, Brendan, you can go there.
No, it's just the last thing which everybody always forget about is remember you got into this industry because you love it. So remember to have fun. Like there's a lot of things get thrown your way. You have to stop, take time, and just like enjoy it, take it in, because this is what you love to do. That's why you got into it. So don't forget to have fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. Jenna also says they're amazing reflections. Thank you. And I think just for our student audience, and I do also know obviously most of our lecturers will watch this and some of our students as well. If you get a junior buyer or a junior, basically a student coming into your stores, what are the type of almost again skills, but what are the subjects that we can offer them that you're maybe like, if someone comes in, this is what they are lacking. Are there any skills that you would recommend us to incorporate into degrees?
Oh my goodness, Excel. Like pro skills in Excel. And since COVID, PowerPoint. Like, well versed. No, I think, and being really very organized, like for junior buyers, generally in my world, they handle a lot of tasks, and most of those tasks have deadlines. So you need to be deadline orientated, and you need to be very good at taking directive and then interpreting that into being able to action things, because your senior or fully fledged buyers, they are busy. So you need to be able to be confident enough in your decision making so that you can really aid and support them. And I think a lot of the work they start out with is quite administrative, but they need to have that real learning mindset to be able to take, interpret, and then action from there, and grow from there. Like for me, the most successful BAs that have very quickly grown into assistant buyers and then buyers have been guys who are quite strategic. So strategic thinking, I think, is so key. Learning how to work with leadership. So there's also almost like a little bit of leadership development that can be done and taught, like how to learn to work with people, because in retail, there's also big personalities normally. So as a young buyer or merchandiser, it's very important to know how to work with different personalities. So there's a bit of psychology to it as well. You need to win over the correct people, get them on your side, and like really, really learn from those guys. So I think those are, but mostly Excel. If you can do VLOOKUP, you're in my good books.
Yeah, I think Brendan, you can add there, and then I'll go to Wilmarie.
Yes, yeah. So the one thing I have picked up in the industry in South Africa, which I think most students should study, is garment technology. I think there's a massive lack of specialist garment technologists in the industry. Recruiting for one is almost impossible. And when you do find someone, it is someone that's been in the industry or in a factory for the past 30 years. They're close to retirement and they're not tech savvy, so they don't know Excel, they don't know how to work on PLM systems, etc. So it's a bit of a struggle that knowledge doesn't get passed down. It is a dying trade at the moment. So there's a massive gap for that. But then the other stuff which you can't teach, and that's what I preach to everybody when I interview, is that skills can be taught, but attitude you're born with. And we are looking for curiosity. If you're curious to learn and you're open to learn, then you'll go very, very far, because the industry wants to teach. The industry wants to impart the knowledge. But a lot of people, especially the Gen Zers, they want to go through, get the degree, and then walk in as a buyer, and they want instant salary of 30, 40K a month. Like, it doesn't work that way. But if you come in and you're curious and you're willing to learn, you very quickly leapfrog everybody else to get to that destination.
Yeah, you just need to be a hard worker, and take initiative. So that comes back to curiosity, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it ties in well with you have to fit into the corporate culture eventually, and a company definitely also invests in a person. It's not just a skill set and a CV. So that's more so for the students. And thank you so much for the information. I think the management of Stadio School of Fashion are sitting like this now and listening to all the modules we can design and maybe even a new certificate. So thank you so much for that, Vilmarie. I'm going to hand over to you to just give your comments there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's wonderful to hear Mona and Brendan echoing what I usually start my first lesson off with my students, echoing everything that you guys have said, and especially just going through that. Mona, you said a couple of times, agility is that you'll have to have it. My students are currently busy with one of their Excel assignments, and it's something I constantly drill into them and just yelling how important it is. You need this. You can't go into the world saying you studied under me and you don't know how to do this. So yeah, I fully agree, and it's wonderful. And I think I'm going to take this snippet and just play it to them year after year and just say, see, I'm not lying. See, you need to know this. Go and practice your Excel. But yeah,
it's my first question I ask in an interview. I'm like, what is your favorite function in Excel?
See, wonderful, exactly. No, I mean, as I say, we VLOOKUPing and everything, but yeah. So no, just fully agree and everything that they said, and it's good to hear what's going on and how true it still is to what is needed for the industry, especially like the skills. I think overall in South Africa, it is across car manufacturing, clothing manufacturing, everything. There's a big dying skill of culture of skills that is retiring and dying out that hasn't been built up. And I fully agree in any physical trade, we need a lot of skills there. Which
so to mirror that, like we actually found that our seamstresses in our factories, we kept losing them to TFG, who's been like recruiting for these like massive factories they've been procuring. And we found that there was no one to recruit. There was no youth to recruit. So what we've actually done is at our Green Thread studio, we've set up a training school that is a feeder for the factory or for the industry. And it's really taking people who have no skill in teaching them from the beginning of sewing to like completing a garment. And trying to enrich people and creating jobs for them in the process, So I think that the more we can do that in the industry and create trade where trade is lacking, I think that is how we're going to save the industry.
Very true.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, on the angle I was going for as well, is that as a buyer, to understand how your product gets put together and constructed, and to have an understanding of the cost of an operation. So if you want a flat lock seam versus a top seam, or you want an overlock here, or you want a raglan sleeve versus a satin sleeve, and you understand the cost implications, it makes you it gives you so much advantage above the others who've only done the retail side of the studies, because now you can negotiate better. You can tell the factories, well, oh shit, I actually need to get $2 off this, or I need to get 20 Rand off this cost. I can change this seam to that, or I can change this operation to that operation. It saves you so much time and back and forth emails with the factories to get into cost or to get the construction in the way that you want it for the end use. So I think not the basic knowledge of how to make a pattern, because that's what all fashion schools do teach as a part of the curriculum, but a little bit more in depth of how do you do cost per minute? How does minute rates get worked out in manufacturing? What operations cost what? And how much time does it take to do each operation? That sort of detail, because time is money and labor is the most expensive thing in South African production. So if you can fix that problem of getting your labor costs down in a product, you become more competitive. So as a buyer,
the minute rating is the multiplier.
Exactly.
And I think to add to that is also knowledge on fabrics. So like we recently did a refresher course through CPUT with a fabric specialist, and just a reminder of how you can engineer your product to be more functional by what fibers you join, like having like adding viscose to a linen to like promote less creasing instead of putting polyester in. Like it's really understanding the blends and the makeups of fabrics even to be able to design better. Like the guy who taught the course does a lot of work for Folky, and he was telling us how their bamboo socks kept wearing through on the hill and kept being an issue. And he was like, yeah, but bamboos are very weak. Like, but Brendan, you on that quiz. I think it's bamboos are weak fibers, so you have to add in cotton to strengthen it or something like that. But it was like understanding the thinking of like, you know what, 1 + 1 doesn't have to equal 2. Like, you can be unexpected about it. And when you have that knowledge, you have so much more power when you negotiate with a supplier, when you develop a product.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important as well, just to add, and thank you so much for all the insight. I think like I say, I think everyone's listening quite like it's very good to know from industry, and it's very good and very positive to also know the investment that you guys make into seamstresses. I think it's such an important gap for us to fill in order to become more localized. So Wolverine, I think you can go to the next slide, and then that's basically, we're going to take any questions from the audience, and I'll open it up for a few minutes and we'll see if there's any questions. So you guys are welcome to type those out now. So I think let's just wait for a minute, and if there's nothing, then I will end us off. Okay, I don't see anyone typing, but if they do start typing whilst we do the closing remarks, I will read out the question quickly. But thank you so much to Brendan and Mona and Wilmarie for joining us. I think the insights we gained from this session is enormous, and I also hope that a lot of local retailers can also find some inspiration here in order to capture this local market. I think it's such an important topic. So I'm going to end off with, I'll go to each one of you with just like closing remarks on local fashion retail, where you see it going, or any thoughts that you might have had in this session, and then I will formally end us off. So Brendan, I'll start with you just because you are on my way left.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's very important to, like I said, stay true to who you are and continue that message. I was going to say earlier, KP Mart's celebrating their 90th birthday next year. So we've been around for 90 years, and it's because it's a values-based business, and we embark on those values. We've got our chairman's got for every single product, he's got a 4-tier sort of values approach, that the product must have all 4 of those things. If it doesn't have those 4 things, it doesn't exist in our business. So that's the foundation that we have been built on, and that we continue to build in every single product that we do. And we see the results because customers trust us and they stick with us, and they're buying for their kids now, and that kid will buy for their grandkid eventually. So it's building that longevity and that relationship for the future, and not just for a quick sale. For me, that's the one thing, and the other thing is mobile. Just how do we get onto mobiles? Because that's the competitive advantage that we'll have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brendan. I 100% agree there, and I'm a very loyal Cape Union supporter myself. So you guys are definitely doing a good job. Wilmarie, I'm going to head over to you for any closing remarks.
Yeah. Also, just as we said, is remaining true. That's also a note that I made earlier, and knowing what your message is out there to the market and sticking to it. Because as we said, it's the youth at this stage, the younger market, that you are targeting or informing a vision for, and they will be the ones that continue to support us as we finally do get all the ways of technology and systems and all of that do come in, and then at least you're already in top of mind of the markets. And I think that also will tie back as well, like I say, keeping your personal messaging, because then you can just keep on following through on the thread on that for your consumers, as online will keep on growing, as we've seen how much we have grown, but as well carrying that through in the brick and mortar, because as we said, I think we are also, it still remains an outing for South Africans, and with it becoming experiential and even more so, it will also remain for brands and retailers to keep on growing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wilmarie. I definitely think that omni-channel seems like the way to go. Mona, last comments from you.
I think for me, like almost a few themes that kept coming up was relevance and staying relevant. And I think, you know what, as long as you keep that at top of mind, staying relevant, whether it's being relevant in your position as a buyer, being relevant as a brand in the retail sphere, like I think that is so important. And continued learning supports being relevant, you know, whether it's learning from your data, learning from your consumer, or learning new skills to be better at your job. I think like that is so important in this like industry. And then I think something that will also help local retail grow is really investing in data and accurate data, because that then gives us the ability to dissect, analyze, and like serve the consumer best and fast and accurately. And then I think like those 4 P's of marketing, like it never gets old. Like the right product at the right price in the right place, the right time, something. Yeah, that is very important. You know, whether it's online or in stores, and that everything, whether it's online or in stores, it's about the experience for the consumer at the end of the day. You know, I think those are just like a few things that we should always, as retailers, just keep top of mind. That's me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mona. I 100% agree with that as well, because I'm obviously a supply chain lecturer. We always say the most important node in the supply chain is the consumer, and focusing on that consumer experience, whether it's online or whether it's in your store, is absolutely, absolutely critical in retail. So I think there is no questions in the audience. So I'm going to say thank you to all 3 of you for your insights and your knowledge. I think everyone and myself really learned a lot. So thank you so much for your time. Especially on a Wednesday evening. We really appreciate your time, and yeah, you guys must all have a wonderful evening, and then you are welcome to start leaving the chat.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. No, it was awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.